record at 6:34.
You ready?
Now we're ready.
All right, thank you. Welcome to the May 13th, 2024 meeting of the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee. My name is Nad Kilani, and I am the chair of this committee. Tonight, we are joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. This meeting is called to order at 6:35 p.m. As a reminder, New York state law requires all community board members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. We need a volunteer to take minutes tonight. If you're able to take minutes, please let us know.
It has to be committee members.
Yeah.
I didn't bring a pen and paper at all. I mean, I can take minutes. I may not have them ready for the June meeting because I'm gonna be away, so I won't be here for like the last week of May, first week of June.
But if you volunteer, I'll make sure to send you the transcript.
Yeah.
The YouTube video.
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I sent an email. I missed it, so I apologize.
Awesome. We will now take attendance by roll call. Brennan will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Jim Collins is not here. Pete Isman.
Present.
Nat Kalani.
Here.
Ava Marie Lassiter.
Present.
David Lowenstein is not with us. Steve O. I don't see Steve either. Reshma Patel.
Here.
Steve Perez.
Present.
Roberto Ruiz Melendez is also not with us, but we have a quorum.
Thank you. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the April 8th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the April 8th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, community members who are here in person, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I will identify you so you can speak. 3, committee members unable to attend in person. If you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. 4, all committee members, it is extremely important that only one person speak at a time so that members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member. 5, chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. That we can go into the agenda. The first topic is the discussion on proposed property tax reform. I know, Steve, you put together some slides that you can walk through.
Sure. Brendan, if you can pull up the presentation. So I introduced this topic as new business last time we met as a committee, and it's something that we discussed very briefly, and then I just said we should talk about it at this meeting. So what I wanted to do was just help get the committee members and the public sort of up to speed on what some of the key issues are. This isn't meant to be sort of like a comprehensive presentation on property tax reform. It's a very big issue. But it's just supposed to be sort of an introduction to some of the key issues. And then also what I did was I pulled some properties in the district just to show you in CB6, like what does it look like? And some of the disparities. So go ahead and start the first slide, Brendan.
Okay.
So just a very quick overview is property taxes are the largest revenue line item in the city budget of any single line item. So that's just to say that it's important for the revenue of the city. What surprised me when I started looking into this issue was that different types of residential properties actually pay significantly different tax rates because property taxes are not based on market value. That just was surprising to me when I first learned about it. And so the third point is that there's a lot of complex formulas and different methods for calculating the property taxes, and what that has resulted in over time is that you see inequities that have developed over the decades of using this kind of system that's a bit cumbersome and complicated. So what happens is what you find across the board, across boroughs, it's within our district, it's across the city, is that lower value properties pay a disproportionate share of property taxes compared to higher value properties. And that gap has just become more exacerbated as the years go by because of the way the system is designed. Next slide. So I would, if I had to pick like two main drivers of inequality in the way that property valuations are calculated, one is this fact that different residential properties are valued differently by what's called a tax class and type. So if you're in a 1 to 3 family home, and think of that as like a townhouse somewhere, that is currently valued based on the statistical model of sales of similar properties. So that's sort of more or less based on kind of a market approach because it's based on sales. However, co-ops and condos, which are known as tax class 2, are valued as if they are rental buildings. And that is derived on some kind of statistical model that the Department of Finance uses to find what they consider to be comparable rental buildings. But what happens is a lot of times what they're comparing to are not comparable properties at all. So it can be pretty random when they decide that this building is a comp for your building, and then they have to calculate as if it's a rental. So then it's very strange because it's not based on actual sales values, it's based on how the rents are fluctuating in certain neighborhoods. And that's how they value your property. Sure.
Is that because some of the rental buildings are rent controlled, or it's based on that, so that a high rise with a doorman could be valued at the same as the rent controlled building?
Correct. Yes, sometimes they have found that there's a rent controlled building that's is a co-op or a condo that's compared to some other rental control building, and then they get artificially low valuations for their property, and they pay taxes based on that. And then rental buildings is the third category, which is, if you're renting, and those are based on the income and expenses of the building. It's a different valuation process. So to add another layer of complication on those different classes and different types of way of valuing property, class 1 properties, which remember the townhouses, are assessed at 6% of their value, while class 2 properties, 2, 3, and 4 are assessed at 45% of their value. So it's just like it's called a fractional assessment. So this is kind of one feature of New York City's kind of complicated way of looking at valuations.
Sorry, the 45% is like comparable to the 6%, like it's on the same base, or?
Yes. But then there's other calculations that come afterwards.
Right.
So you'll see how it kind of works out. So next slide. The second piece of what drives inequality is that there's caps on how these assessed values can grow over the years. So if you're a class 1 property, you cannot grow by more than 6% annually or more than 20% over 5 years. If you're a class 2 property, which is the condos co-ops, with up to 10 units, you cannot increase by more than 8% a year or 30% in 5 years. And so what's happened, that's one of the sources of how it diverges over time, is that there's caps that are placed. And so the valuations kind of, in a rapidly appreciating market, there's caps that are keeping those properties taxes low, whereas in a other kind of neighborhood, those property taxes are kind of going up over time. So those essentially, what these differences are that, you have an effective tax rate where you start to see these divergences over time with these different types of properties. Any questions about that? Okay.
So in class 1, it says they're not usually taxed at the target assessment of 6%, so it could be even lower, and then the next class would still be 8%?
Correct.
And there's no resets, like, in California, when you sell it, like resets.
No,
There's
just,
only,
like I said, it's not based on market value
Yeah.
at all. So there's no reset. If there's a sale, correct. You still pay whatever it was paying since they first started this process in the 80s. Okay, next slide. So I just took, how many are here? 6 properties in the district, in our district, just to give you an example. These are not, I just kind of randomly picked some properties. I didn't try to find like the most egregious examples. There could be ones that, are paying markedly different rates, but I just wanted to find different types of properties so that you can see what it looks like if you randomly kind of select properties here. So if you can, what I've listed here, property value, what that tax is for that property. And then the last column shows you the effective tax rate, like the rate that they're paying for taxes. So you can see the top one is a $12 million townhouse that has an effective tax rate of approximately 1%. But if you look at kind of the more modest value properties at the bottom, $620,000 condo in Murray Hill is paying a tax rate that's almost, it's 1.8%. It's these percentages sound small, but if you look at the actual taxes that are paid, it can be quite significant, particularly relative to the value of the property. The one that kind of jumps out at me is if you look at the 4th one, which is a luxury condo in Gramercy, that's around 2.5 million. They're paying $36,000 in annual property taxes, but the $5 million townhouse 2 rows above is paying almost the same, $41,000 in property taxes, whereas the value of their property is almost double. And this is again just showing some of the quirks of how this assessment calculations kind of pan out over time. We actually, as a district, don't have. We're kind of a mix of properties. Some people pay more, some people pay less. What you'll see later, and I'll show in the outer boroughs, you see kind of more certain boroughs are much more disadvantaged. We sort of have a mix of properties. So, next slide. So I know I sent some articles ahead of time, or the committee sent out some articles for folks to read. I just took, there was a commission that the Blasio administration put together for looking at property tax reform, and they issued some recommendations in a report. And then we have the current comptroller, who has also issued some recommendations about ways that you could fix the system. So I just pulled out some of their recommendations or suggestions. And so some of them are, first one would be simply create a new tax class for all small residential properties. So whether you're a townhouse, a condo, a co-op, a very small rental building of 4 to 10 units, just apply uniform rates uniformly to those types of properties. Secondly, you could value the property based on sales-based market data values rather than this requirement about comparing co-ops and condos only to rental buildings and the rents that they would derive. Third, you could end the fractional assessments, that's that 6% versus 45% difference, and then remove the assessed value growth caps which was that second piece of the inequality, so that you're only kind of looking at how they grow over time, but by market data. And then, well, one of the reasons why those kind of disparities were created to begin with was that they didn't want someone to not be able to afford their home, right? Because they're in a rapidly appreciating neighborhood. So you do have still, you can have a partial homestead exemption. So it's your primary residence, you do get an exemption, as you do today. And then there's another feature which calls a circuit breaker. And this would sort of help you reset your property taxes based on your income. So let's say you bought a house for a certain amount, and then suddenly the whole neighborhood was just exploding, but you didn't get a different job, your income stayed at kind of what it was. There's ways for them to recalculate based on the income, which doesn't happen at all. So like nobody looks at income in deciding how the fairness of property taxes should be paid today. It's based on the system that I described. So those are just some of the ideas that I think have come out of these different bodies that have looked at ways to reform the system. And so now, if you go to the next slide, Brendan, I just said, what would happen to those properties, the same ones that I showed before, that, their property value, that was the tax they were paying, but if everybody paid a flat rate of 1.05%, the reason why I picked that number was, I wanted to make it relatively revenue neutral, right? We're not collecting more tax, we're not losing money for the city, it's revenue neutral when you do this reform. And it's sort of striking to see how some of the new property tax differences. So the $5 million townhouse that I was talking about, their taxes go up by 27%, which seems like a lot, but that's a pretty valuable property. And then look at the more modest properties in Murray Hill and Midtown East, their properties are coming down 43% and 38% respectively, which, the 11,000 to a 6,000 jump for someone who's living in a property of that value, it's probably a meaningful amount for them to be able to justify these kinds of changes. Whereas, they seem relatively modest, I guess, in terms of some of the changes in property tax, but it's sort of right sizing what people are paying versus what the value of the property is relative to the system we have today, where it's quite arbitrary in terms of where you're paying. And then the last slide, Brendan, this just came from the Independent Budget Office. They put together a map of all the different neighborhoods, and what if you did this across the city? What the red zones show are where you have properties that are underpaying currently, and like the percentage of owners that they would see their property taxes go up. So in the red areas, between 90 and 100% of properties would be seeing a rise in their taxes under this new system. Whereas the blue areas, almost 90 to 100% of them would see all of their property taxes coming down. And then the colors in the middle, like ours, it's a mix, right? You have some properties that we pay more, some properties that we pay less. It just depends on the kind of property you live in and relative to the value. And so another argument that has been made about this is look at the distribution across the city. And so a lot of sort of heavily predominantly minority neighborhoods and low income areas are paying a disproportionate unfair amount of taxes relative to some pretty wealthy areas. So that's kind of one of the arguments that's been made. The lawsuit, as I mentioned last time, it was sent back down to the lower court, and now it's pending. So we don't quite know what the outcome is going to be, because that's still a pending suit against the city by this group that I mentioned last time, Tax Equity Now New York, which has filed a suit against the city for saying that this is unconstitutional to have and discriminatory to have a property tax system like this. So I guess at this point we're trying to see how that would all sort of come together. But at the end of the day, the city is going to have to fix it if the lawsuit comes to this, depending on how the lawsuit pans out. Let me just pause there and see if there's any reactions or questions. Dee.
Thank you for summarizing the presentation. So when I was president of my co-op, which was in the 90s, I'm sorry, in the 80s, we actually challenged the assessment of the property taxes. And you were challenging the class 1 and class 2 formulas. And there was a whole drive to really redo it that went no place. But there's a gimmick that you're also not mentioning, and that's going in and challenging your assessment. And there are attorneys that take the cases on consignment, and they get a percentage back of your property tax as their fee if the tax goes down for the unit. So in addition to the formulas that you showed, if you have a co-op or condo that has some financial able and or the will, you can challenge them, and then the formulas all change because the assessments go down of the percentages. So it is even more complicated than what you show.
Thank you for this detailed presentation. It's excellent. Also, the formulas, my understanding was that the older buildings pay less real estate taxes, like because the pre-war buildings, right? There's a certain cap on them that goes, and I don't know if just that's the 6%, I thought it was even more. And that explains why when you look at the Upper West Side or you look at like North Brooklyn, right? Because those are all probably older building stocks and they're paying a lot lower taxes.
It's because there's a quirk in the way that the methodology about how
Yeah.
how do they pick the comparable rental
Don't-
properties?
yeah.
They have to look at the ones that were also built,
Around the same
Yeah.
time, yeah.
so
Yeah,
that's.
yeah, because there's all these, if you look at Upper East Side, Central Park West, there, if you're looking to buy, you see that our neighborhood, you'd pay a lot more in taxes versus a
Correct.
much nicer apartment in those neighborhoods because they're older housing
Correct.
stock.
Correct.
But then there's also, there are buildings that were built in the 2000s that got the tax abatement too. Which some of them are probably running out now, but did you take a look at that?
You mean the
Because it was-
421A?
Yeah, the 421A.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, yeah, they reset over
Yeah.
over a period of 10 years. That program doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, because they got rid of it in
So,
2 years.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's, even if there are some that still qualify for that, it's going to disappear pretty soon. And it only applies to a fairly small amount of buildings.
Okay, they're small, yeah.
Because it was only those that were developed during that time period.
Is it, Brendan, could you go back to the recommendations page?
Sure. Just a moment.
Yeah, in my building, we've also challenged, many times.
Correct, I mean,
Yeah.
my building has also challenged,
Yeah.
here's the issue though, like, right, we're spending millions of dollars on legal fees.
Yeah.
And when those could go to
Yeah.
just the city collecting the tax.
No, and we
And
get
so
very little
it's-
back after that, like, we had something that went on for 10 years, and then we finally got
Correct.
some money back, but so much we owed to lawyers.
And so like this year, for example, and they're very quirky.
Yeah.
So we've gotten, sometimes in some years, we've gotten something back,
Mhm.
but this year, there was no offer. That's what our property manager said, the city has not made an offer,
Yeah.
so that just means we're not considering any adjustments. Too bad.
Yeah. Cause I feel like that, I don't know if there's like a real solution to that part of like the assessed value kind of thing, cause I feel like every city I've like read about, it's always like you can challenge it and it ends up being that, so that part feels hard to fix. But I feel like I was thinking of these and like thinking of like which ones are sort of most viable as ways to impact, like, affect the change. And to me, like at least like the AV caps feels pretty important. I feel like that's probably the best way of, yeah, like, it's like you don't have to do it in 1 year, but you take some sort of historical average or some sort of way to do it. Cause that feels like at least one step to say like, look, maybe you don't, like, I think the other ones are good for fixing the problem broadly, but at least that one prevents it from getting worse, right?
True, and I just thought that the second one about, like, it was very strange to me that, they pretend like you're a condo, that you're renting it to determine its value rather than just sales,
Yeah.
like in the building or whatever, so it was.
Do you know like how that came to be? Like, is it like the co-op's like lobbying for that to probably lower, or like, what do you think it is?
There is a reference in the lawsuit as to what
Okay,
was the origin behind that, but I'm.
I'll learn about it, yeah.
Yeah,
Because yeah, I think to Avery's point, like you just like they probably lobby for it because you can just dodge it through rent control, right? And then like the rents grow less fast than the value of the co-ops.
I just wanted to know in point 4, what is the reason that it would have to take over 5 years to remove the assessed value growth caps? What is the reason that it's so slow?
No, what they're suggesting is do it over a gradual period, because we don't wanna, if someone's property, if they should be paying a lot more tax, it's gonna be a shock to them to have to pay it all, starting to pay a new amount all at once. So they're suggesting like a phase in over a period of time, so it reaches it's what they should be paying in 5 years. Just gives them a little bit of time to adjust to like the new system.
Yeah, and I think they do the assessments every 5 years too. Like they have every annual assessment, but the big one is every 5 years. It's,
When they change
yeah.
the values, yeah.
Is there an objection regarding valuing the property as sales-based versus this requirement of a comparable with the comparable running bill? Is that where the real resistance is? Is that what?
I don't really know where the resistance has been among the I know there were efforts to get the elected officials to do it, and there was no response, and that was, I mean, the reason you can see it, like, for all of Brooklyn,
Yeah,
Park Slope
yeah,
is basically gonna
get it, yeah.
dramatically see and so their politicians are like, no, we can't raise taxes. You can imagine that conversation going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's more kind of the pushback around what some of
Yeah,
these issues are.
and it is also the highest voter turnout district in the city. North Brooklyn votes much more than anyone else does.
I think B has a comment.
So, this is an extremely complex issue, as everyone has seen. So what is the thought for the committee? Are you thinking about us doing a public hearing, getting some input, waiting for the lawsuit? What would be the next steps? I mean, this is great analysis, but as a committee, where do you think we should go?
I mean, I sort of wanted to hear, now that everybody kind of understands some of the issues, I kind of wanted to get feedback from the committee around what ideas that, and I know I guess the housing committee mentioned that they had, I went through all of the CB6's resolution and there was nothing ever about property tax. So I don't know if it's come up and just people have decided, well, let's not worry, deal with it but it just seems
Well, I
like.
could tell you, since I have been on the board, this is the first time the issue has come up, and I've been a long time member.
Okay, so I mean, I feel like we're in a point now where we should have an opinion on like how this is gonna pan out, especially with the lawsuit coming in, and it's just like every administration talks about it. There's been lots of articles written about this. It's kind of this pervasive issue, and I find it strange that it hasn't gotten more traction. But I don't know. I mean, the idea was, yeah, let's talk about it internally. Let's maybe invite someone from the comptroller's office to walk us through some of the recommendations they've come up with. Maybe somebody from one of the groups that's part of this lawsuit, and someone who has a legal background, so we can understand like what would be possible, and then sort of come up with a very high level resolution. I would say, like, we're not tax experts here, and we don't want to get into the details of it should be this percentage or that. But I think to be able to say to the community the kind of tax system that we think is fair, that's what we would want, our elected officials and our city agencies to be able to push forward.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I think it's kind of bringing in those experts to talk to it, and then probably like a public hearing as well, just to get people, like folks in the community, because I feel like we are in one of those districts where the tax rate will generally go up. So it is worth hearing folks' thoughts of like, how they think about it, and like how just, soliciting their input. I feel like a lot of this is like some people pay more, but it typically, to your slide, is like people who can afford it, honestly. So I think it is worth like pushing on this, even though not everybody's going to love it. And I think some electeds are in favor of it, but obviously some are more accountable to constituents, so they're not going to really do that. But I think that makes sense to me of like, get those voices in the room, like people in the comptroller's office, get their thoughts, and really then we can do a public hearing and just sort of socialize it with the community. And I think that also will let us sort of monitor in the background what happens with the lawsuit.
If I could just comment, I think the public hearing is really important because as you articulated, there'll be a number of winners and a number of, I think, losers in our area. And you really need to hear. But the formulas are so complex that I actually don't think, unless you're involved in a board and looking at it, that most people understand, how the taxes are based.
Yeah, that's why maybe we even need someone from the Department of Finance
Mhm.
who's doing the assessments. And then I want to say in 2020, because it was Zoom time, it was pandemic time, when the de Blasio administration had this proposal to change, Carlina had helped a few learn like about these Zoom, and so perhaps her office might be another
Okay,
resource, yeah.
that's a great idea. Thank you.
So yeah, we should schedule a
Yeah.
forum, probably in the fall now, because we're not gonna meet in July
Yeah.
and August, it's too soon to probably do it in a month.
Yeah, I
Get
think that's
everyone,
right.
because we're gonna have so many different people who are quite busy,
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
And I think that lets us also see how the lawsuit pans out.
yeah.
Cause I feel like even if the lawsuit goes through, it's not gonna be settled in a month or something. Like,
Yeah,
it's too
no,
complicated.
the way legal things go, yeah.
With your forum, what are you recommending, or who would be the attendees to the forum, regarding this issue?
So we're saying the comptroller's office, the Department of Finance. Somebody from, what's the coalition called again?
TEMI, Tax Equity Now.
Yeah, Tax Equity Now.
Would we be reaching out to any sort of, condo or co-op individual organizations? Because I don't think, with the excellent job that you've done, I really don't think there's a lot of awareness. And as far as our city representatives and our state representatives, with the amount of literature that I get, it's primarily focused on renters. And a large part of the voting public are renters. And I think that's another reason why this hasn't been addressed, so that the particular groups that it would affect, would there be certain, as I said, condo or co-op organizations that we would want to also attend, or heads of that, to attend our forum?
I would say perhaps a managing agent, because
Okay.
as you said, and I think. My building also is the managing agent deals with it. I don't actually think that many board level people actually even understand the formula or paid attention to it. It's the managing agent that brings it up, that, oh, you know what, you can challenge this, you could get money back.
Yeah.
As long as it's more,
Yeah.
that's part of the public to me,
Yeah.
but it's I would say more moneyed public. So the managing agent, if those people would attend, because as I said,
We could,
Yeah.
the majority, even in our community, I believe, are renters. I mean, of course.
No,
we
no,
have-
yeah, the city is 70% rental.
That's what I
renters.
mean. That's why it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
getting the attention.
Yeah, no, I mean, not just that, even if you have an issue with your managing agent or your condo board, or co-op board, there's some rules that govern co-ops at the state level, but there's very little resources available for condo owners in the city because there's just not that many. And again, goes back to who also votes. And they're
That's
also
what I
not
was
people who
talking
voted.
about.
Yeah,
Most of the
so,
voters are renters.
yeah, so we should invite them to a public forum. I mean, I think those are the people who would have an interest in the public forum. I'm not sure having someone just say one building on a panel is really the right way to do.
No, if you're saying the managing agent, or
Yeah.
maybe it's a managing agent or company for several
Yeah.
co-op buildings. Yes, as long as there was someone representing a large body of that group,
Yeah,
and since that group is a minority in the city.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's right, to have their voice and just get them.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right.
yeah.
But
and also just to reiterate too, that actually renters, this is a burden for renters too. I didn't go into it
Yeah, because
because
the rent,
because I can't pull data on the taxes that the rental buildings pay. It's very complicated.
yeah,
So, and you can't show them, like, it's hard to pull it. So I didn't have examples, but it's actually the worst. If you're in a rental building, it's even worse than the amounts that I showed in terms of the skewing. So the rental buildings actually pay way more properties. Like when those rates were like 1%, it's like 3% for, like, in terms of the value of the rental buildings. And those, what people are arguing is that the property taxes are passed on to the renters by the owners at some point. So
Yeah,
it actually it affects renters a lot
Yeah.
in this issue, the way that the valuations are done. So it is everyone, it's.
Yeah, I think part of that is the renters never see it because it's just
Yeah.
all in the same bill.
Yeah, because they don't, yeah, they see, oh my God, why am I paying this much in rent, but they don't know it's a property tax.
Well, that particular point that you mentioned, that it's eventually the cost to the owner, let's say for a rent stabilized building, is gonna be passed in some way, especially if, certain apartments in the building become market value at a particular point. In that way, the general public should know about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
B, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I heard us talking about management companies, but there's also a group of us that are self-managed. And so you have, for example, I have 625 units, so we're pretty large. So as individual boards, we've been dealing with those issues that you're talking about over the years. So I think if you're sampling groups of people, there's a variety that we could do in the neighborhood. And I think that's really a very important thing for us to do in the fall.
Yeah,
Right. And I happen to have a relationship with one of the largest companies that manages more than 200 buildings in the city. So I can invite them to.
I just like to say though, if you try to adjust also the rental buildings, and then the amount of property taxes that the city is gonna collect is gonna be a lot less, we're really screwed because that money is not even going to general fund, it's going to pay for debt that we've issued for infrastructure projects. So you're gonna see a huge impact on the other side.
yeah, I think there probably has to be some effort to make it more revenue neutral, like the slide you
Yeah.
did, which.
Yeah.
It's gonna piss off some
Yeah,
people.
no,
Yeah.
revenue neutral is definitely the
Me-
goal.
me-
We
yeah,
do not
yeah.
wanna disturb the city's budget.
Yeah.
And then it's just too important.
So is that part of what we're going to present from this committee? That there should be a certain date or whatever that we have this particular forum and who we want to attend? Is that what we should be working on? I don't know. So we have something to present, in September.
I mean, I think we decided that the only thing is, I mean, scheduling wise, like September, we'll have a public meeting on the budget. And so just need to coordinate with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It might be later.
Yeah.
yeah, but I think with the lawsuit, it's not.
Yeah.
Like urgent,
It's not.
because the lawsuit's not settled yet, and that's really gonna start to have to figure it out after the lawsuit. But I think it's, yeah, you have the September budget hearing, October, we solidify the budget, maybe it's a November meeting or something. But I think it's I think it is a priority for us to continue to figure out, given the lawsuit does make it a bit more timely, but it's not like June timely.
Yeah, they won't propose a fix.
Yeah.
Even if the lawsuit is found, even if the city is found, yes, this is unconstitutional, you must fix it.
Yeah, it's gonna take time, as we
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for putting it
yeah,
together.
thank you.
All right, I think we can move on to the next topic, which is a discussion on the CB6 budget request process. Brendan, if you could put up the one pager. So I know we've been talking about this for some time, and basically, we've put together this document that we would intend to sort of share with, I'll come up in a second, to all the community board members. And basically the idea here is basically making a clear, like, user-friendly document that we can distribute to the entire board of, here are the key deadlines in the budget, and here's sort of how to approach the budget request process. The thinking here is both for new and old members, part of the issues that we typically have around getting the budget requests in on time, a combination of one, sort of what needs to be done and like what are the timelines, but two, how to broadly think about these budget requests. So the goal is just to have this be a user-friendly thing that folks can refer to in every committee of what are the important things to do, what are the timelines, and what does the budget process look like, with the thought that this helps us just be more prepared and ensures everybody's able to really advocate for their budget and there's no surprises, and we sort of avoid the typical like September, October jam job where everything's coming to us, it's not well structured and we get stuff last minute. So that was sort of the view of this document. The first page, so Brendan, you know if you could like move the, I don't know.
Yeah, can we
full
see a
screen it?
pillar?
Yeah. Maybe use
Or
like,
zoom out.
yeah, zoom out a bit and then like full screen, like F11.
Yeah, or you can do preview so it doesn't show all the margins and stuff. Maybe, I don't know.
This is,
I don't know, how do you do preview? Rachel?
I think file, if we just, I mean, this is fine,
Yeah,
too,
this
like, we
is
don't need
okay.
to waste your time.
Yeah,
So this is being
Maybe not really that
distributed to the chairs of all of the committees?
so we haven't done anything yet. This is just for this committee right now. But the intention is something, and like open to thoughts on how to approach this, but we were thinking something to distribute to like not only the chairs, but just the entire community board of here are the important things to know about the budget process. And I'll walk through some of it, but this first page that's up here now basically has, it's off at the top, but basically like the months for each activity.
Right, yes.
And then like the activities that you do on those months. And the idea is this way, everybody across the board is aware of what are the key steps of the budget process. That way they're more able to sort of be informed of when they need to do certain things and just make it easier for us as a community board overall to advocate for our priority requests. But like the reason bringing it up here is basically I wanted to get folks' feedback on sort of, do they think this works as a process? Do they think there's anything we should add or subtract, or just broadly like reactions to the document? So yeah, this first page, sorry, if you could scroll up just the top half of this, sorry. Yeah, that's perfect. Has basically at the top where it's a bit cut off is just like the months for each of these. And then it has the activities. And then we tried to keep it like a one-pager type format here, just so it's very easy for every committee to refer to this and say, what do we need to do in every sort of section? And then at the bottom, there are those like due deadlines of basically when we want to get those requests. And the idea here is just to keep it relatively simple and streamlined of like, what are the priority to-dos that each committee has to do.
So the only thing I'm gonna say is that October 25th deadline, we have to submit to OMB by October 31st, and the resolution has to pass in the October meeting, full board meeting, and so October 25th is probably gonna be too late. Because the full board, it depending on the year, right? But
Yeah.
it's the second Wednesday is gonna be more like the 15th of October.
How we were thinking about it is like the budget requests are what they're actually submitting to us.
Yeah.
That's just like the tweaks to like the needs statement and things like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So that September 31st deadline gets into
Yeah.
your October meeting.
Yeah,
And then that October is when that whole big write-up.
exactly. And
Okay.
how we were thinking about it is they submit by September 31st, and then like probably the week after that, we have
Yeah.
our budget meeting. We
Yeah.
do like the classic thing where we basically like figure out the rankings of the requests, and then we go to full board like the week after that.
Yeah.
And then October 25th will be after that full board, so we'll have everything, all the rankings done.
Yeah,
And then on top of that, these are like, if there's any tweaks to the needs statement, those come then, and then that gives like Jesus and Brendan and team like a few days to put it into the system, so they're not like rushing at the last
yeah,
minute.
no, that makes sense. And so then are you thinking the public, it's also only 30 days in September, so it's due September 30th, right? 30 days, half September, yeah. But are you thinking that the public meeting will be in, that October budget meeting is a public meeting then? Or are you thinking you do the public meeting, still you have the discussion, then you go back to committee?
I think it's probably doing the public meeting in September.
Yeah,
And then the October one is just where we sit down, it's always those late nights where we're just like ranking
Yeah.
everything and just figuring it and consolidating it.
yeah,
But that, like, our intention was like the public meeting happens in September, just to
Okay.
get all the feedback on requests there, that way we go into the October meeting, we're armed with all that information. But definitely open to like thoughts. I know a lot of people have been on this committee longer than I have and have more experience with how to think about it. But this is how Steve and I were thinking.
no, I mean, I
about
think it's
put it
great that you
together.
put it down, and I think it's great. The only reason why I was asking you about the dates is when you have the public meeting, maybe you want everyone to have submitted, the committees to have submitted stuff, because some committees don't submit anything.
Yeah.
And I thought this year, what we did is we told them blank, we
Yeah.
didn't send them the thing. So what if by the September meeting, people don't get back to you? I also think it's a good idea to share this with everybody, because we have 12 new members now. So there's a lot of change happening.
Yeah.
And it just would be useful for them to learn, the new
Yeah.
members to learn, and everybody to see it. So in the future, people just have it in their head that this is something.
Yeah, that was definitely our intention. I feel like
Mhm.
even for me being on budget when I started,
Yeah.
it's like you don't really know what happens until you live it.
Yeah.
And people who never go on budget don't really know what happens until they see it.
Yeah.
So that, I agree with that. B, I see you have your hand raised.
So I think this is excellent, and you could look and move some of the dates. But I think to try it out would be wonderful if we could do it as part of the mentoring program, for the new CB6 members. We have 12 new members. And because you're getting into something even more basic, I think a lot of people on committees don't know what a district needs statement is. We're making an assumption. And so it's almost like you really need your highlight points as to what we're looking for in some of the assumptions. So I think this can form the basis for a refresher for people that are here, people that really never got trained on it, and the new people.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea and definitely makes sense. I'm not exactly sure how the mentorship program is working, but we could definitely do like a budget teach-in as part of that, just like a half an hour thing with all the new members and interested current members of just like our thoughts on that. But we can talk about that with Sandy.
Yeah, because I was going to actually send a note to Sandy to ask her when they're starting the mentoring program, because, there are some very basic things people need to know, the bylaws, for example, and, the community needs statement, the role on committees, the opinions, conflict of interest. So those are all things that people need to know before they really get involved with committees.
Yeah, if you do send that note, you can CC me and Steve, and we'd definitely be happy to talk about the budget process. And we could definitely like introduce this to new members as part of that mentorship program. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, I'll include it on CC, you guys.
Awesome, thank you. Yes.
I had a question, regarding the, due September 30th, that particular date. Did you say that there isn't a public meeting on that specific date? Is that correct?
That's right.
There is not. Or
No,
there is.
there's not.
Oh, I see. But, in terms of the public meeting, were you also talking about, the fact that the committee chairs would have submitted their request, but would it be on the same date as the public meeting, or would you be breaking out before the public meeting to do that, and then the general public would be coming in? Is that how that would be structured? Because I don't think that it can be part of the exact public meeting. Is that how it would be arranged?
If I follow your question, and let me know if I don't answer it, I think it's basically, we do the public meeting sometime in September to really like receive views from the community about their views. And then the requests are gonna come slightly after that, but it would be part of like our early October meeting where we're actually ranking the requests.
Don't we usually do that? I think last year, didn't we do that at one meeting? They were like the ranking, the
Yeah.
public hearing kind of was the meeting that we
We can
then
definitely do,
got
yeah,
everything and then.
Yeah,
like,
mostly because no
that's-
one shows up at the public
Yeah.
hearing,
Right,
so there's actually
it's
not much happening.
the ranking, yeah, but like, that's
Yeah.
when we've had
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
input from all the committees.
Yeah.
That's the first time we're kind of seeing it. And that's also when the public would have a chance
Chance
to
to
also
also
see
see it.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that when I put this together, it was kind of
Yeah.
like thinking
we could yeah,
to do it that way so that we've collected everything.
yeah,
We're gonna have a hearing because it's open and
Yeah.
we are gonna go, it's the first time the committee.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Which
gonna be
is how it,
seen
which
every-
is
yeah.
how it's worked in the past,
Yeah, and
yeah,
then we kind of,
yeah.
cause otherwise it's like, I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
how we have a public hearing in September, we haven't
Yeah,
gotten anything
Yeah.
yet.
yeah, so that's
you
why
know.
I was questioning the
Yeah, yeah,
dates.
yeah.
right?
Yeah, no,
Because-
that
But, like,
works, yeah.
The
Yeah.
first, but like in October, it says BNGA committee holds public hearing on the budget requests.
Yeah.
That first week in October is when we do that.
Yeah.
Public meeting, so not
Meeting.
September, it's
Yeah,
also
we'll do that.
September,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because we haven't received.
Same day,
all-
yeah, so that's, yeah.
Yeah, I know Brendan, you were.
Yeah, so sometimes in the past, the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee has held its public hearing in September, but last year
Yeah,
we did it in October, and in this chart it's listed. for
yeah, I think we can do it like that.
October.
Yeah,
It's super challenging. I mean, I know, like, I think Jesus was advocating for doing it earlier, but
Yeah.
the problem is. We don't meet in the summer,
Yeah.
so it's really challenging to like have that September, like committees just
Yeah,
aren't
and also
ready.
September meeting, like I think this past year, so the last year was the only year we did in October since I've been on the committee, we did in
Yeah.
September. But the September meeting also, because it is people come back from the holiday, like everyone takes that time, Labor Day time off and stuff.
Yeah, the one other challenge with October is, so this committee usually meets
Oh,
on the
Columbus Day,
second month,
Columbus Day,
Columbus Day /
or Indigenous People Day.
And at another layer, sometimes the second Monday of the month is after the second Wednesday of the month.
Oh, yes,
So if the committee decides to have its, like, just establish having a public hearing on budget requests rankings in October, the committee, when the meeting needs to be rescheduled for October, will need to be really on the ball about responding to emails, polls, etc. about rescheduling October.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking at the calendar right now to see October, this year, what is happening.
But I agree with that. I'm like, I think that's how we've been thinking about it, is it would be rescheduled to be on a date that is not Indigenous Peoples' Day and is something before the full board, just to give us time to make it work.
Not Indigenous Peoples' Day, not one of the Jewish holidays, because.
Yeah,
that's also.
I'm sure there is at least one day. I'm willing-
I'm sure there's at least one day.
No, but it's actually, the problem it does happen is that then getting quorum is very hard too, to get a date that works for everybody. Scheduling does become problematic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
As long as this is structured before the actual public meeting, that was my point.
You're at.
That I know in the past, sometimes when there's a public meeting, there would be what I would call a pre-CB6 meeting for certain issues before it was the actual public meeting. That's the only way. So either do it, but all of that would have to be settled before the public came in regarding these issues. That was my
Yeah, so-
concern.
Full board in October will be on Wednesday, the 9th. And I don't see that as any holiday, so I think it will stay on that date, so we would have to do it that first week in October or the 7th or the 8th. Indigenous People Day is the 14th of October. Which would have been also the date of our budget meeting.
yeah,
The only other thing I want to add about the public hearing portion of it is, remember, a lot of people that are coming to these or have opinions about the requests, right? They're topical, right, on
Yeah.
certain things. So the public hearing is actually the committees that are doing their September meetings to order their, presumably they're going through their budget requests in their own committees. And there's public available to hear that at their committees before.
Yeah.
So there is like a public hearing before it comes to us, because those committees have already presumably gotten input on those.
Yeah, they do, but people may not hear because we put it as a public hearing. So for instance, the only people that showed up this year were the pickleball people.
Mhm.
And they came to budget, but they actually also came to parks. Because they were very adamant about getting pickleball courts, yeah. But they may not, like some people don't, yeah.
yeah. I think that's right. It's just like the public hearing has like, it needs to be in like the city register or whatever, and it has like another layer of it that makes it.
Mhm. Yeah, but the thing is, we can get into the dates and stuff later,
Yeah.
like this is a good, I mean, I think this is a great idea and, just dates would be TBA until we figure out,
Yeah,
yeah.
and like worst case, if we need to move the September 30th back a couple days or
Yeah.
something, I think we can sort of tweak it. Like, I think that would be the thing of just like, we'll look into the dates, we'll see if there is a
Yeah.
meeting that folks can at least target meeting, and if not, maybe we make it like September 28th or something.
Yeah.
That way we can do it on September 20th. I don't know if those are like Wednesdays or what days those are,
Yeah.
but like 28th, 29th, 30th. So I think this is generally just like the broad framework of like what
Mhm.
would it look like? That's how we thought about this page. Brenda, if you go down to page 2.
sure.
So we have some other pages. This page is basically developing some guidance on the requests. And really, as we thought about this, the main things we were looking for are just to like really figure out, are these requests like still relevant and priorities for the boards? I know typically we'll always like be looking at requests as part of budget, and we'll be like, we don't have no idea what this is, and we'll see it's been on there for 10 years and no one's really updated it. So a lot of this is really pushing each committee to, as much as we can, as budget at least, to really like think about each of their requests and like use these as sort of a way to, reevaluate them every year. And we'll see if like this system works, we continue to update it. And if you guys have thoughts on how to sort of adapt it, definitely open to it. But really the idea here is just to make sure that everything is a request that matters to the community board. That way, when we do get the requests or the responses back and things like that, we can actually really full-throatedly like actually say, here's why we did this, here's how we push for it. And you'll at least have some sponsors on the board who are willing to spend the time following up with the agency and really chasing it down. So it doesn't just fall to like Jesus and Brendan to be like, what is this request? How do we handle it? So that was really the thrust of why we put this together.
See, when you say we, it was you as our chair and this office that put this
And
together.
Steve, yeah.
Oh, excellent. I have to tell you, this is so progressive. I'm just very happy in terms of what you present to the other committee chairs and in a very user-friendly way.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, and that was a big focus for us because I mean, I think back to when I joined and you just have no idea what the whole process is like and you're just kind of lost. And then like, at least in budget, you see it and you live it. But if you're, let's say you're on like transportation and parcel, you're never gonna really see it except for like the brief September interaction. So this is hopefully gonna make that better and make every board member like more involved in the budget process. Cause I do think this is like a pretty effective way for us to see change happen for our board.
So that if we voted on this draft today,
Mhm.
at least this would now be a finished product to present to all of the committee chairs, is that right? And
Yeah.
that would be at their June meeting. They would have it for their June meeting.
And you share it exactly.
Yeah, like, we have exec on Wednesday, so
Yeah.
if like, we don't need to do it today, but if we're
Mhm.
good with this today, I could bring it up at exec Wednesday. And then we could bring it up at full board as well and carve out like 5 minutes at full board, just to like start getting it into people's heads. And then I think as well, as new members join, we put it in the mentorship time, we carve out 30 minutes. And I think just given how the board has turnover, I think you can quickly like get people to learn how these things work in a relatively rapid way, because like if 12 members join every year and those 12 people learn about this, hopefully within like, 4 or 5 years, like a lot of the board is very aware of how these things work and it's sort of like, they follow through on these things. This is the best practice and we set it up like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, then the other part of this page that you can see here is just the current requests we have. And this has like the limit of sort of requests. Not much for like everybody to do there, but I think it's just helpful for people to know sort of, we only have so many requests and these are across all the committees. So just so they can keep that in mind of like what's truly important versus what's something that's been on there that we just don't want to remove for sentimental reasons or whatever. And then, yeah, there's a bit more down. If you scroll down a bit, Brendan, sorry for making you scroll a lot. Down right there where you were, the guidance part is perfect. So this is just adding some more guidance on sort of what to think about. This is stuff that I feel like a lot of members know, but just putting it on paper is helpful, just so they can start thinking about it, especially for a new member who maybe has a request they want to advocate for. It's like, what are things we should be thinking about? What are things I should bring to my committee to really show? So that's really what was the thrust of this part of it. The one thing we have there, which I think is helpful, is like if there are any like stakeholders, that last bullet that have like put any letters forth or anything, if I feel like we don't get that often, but anything like that is also just helpful for when it goes to the agency to say, hey, look, like these other people outside of the board have also, been speaking up about this and really want this to happen. And then the last page is a new thing that Steve put together, which I think is actually really helpful. And this basically is something open to like thoughts on this, but I think it's like an actually really cool thing we should try this year. But basically in that Airtable document, adding these 3 criteria that each committee will take every request or every budget request and like rank as like low, medium, or high. And the idea here is just to basically add a bit more color to each of our requests and just make it more fulsome. And to the extent of that, also just like get them to think about the request a bit deeper rather than just sort of, again, repeating requests from prior years. So there's 3 bullets here. There's impact, there's community support, and there's feasibility. And the idea here is to basically have each of these 3, have them rank it low, medium, or high. And that at least lets us sort of, when we're deciding as a committee how we want to rank these, we can use these as another data point to really help us think about, what are the requests? How did the committee think about it? And how did they view it? I think they're like, might be some like grade inflation on these and stuff like that, but I think it's at least helpful as a data point. And every year we can sort of revisit it to the extent like if something didn't work, or we can leave it if it worked. But I think it is a really helpful way just for us. So what we're sitting there in that like October meeting to basically say, okay, we have these 2 requests from parks. How did they think about it? How should we sort of evaluate it? And just let sort of their opinion have more impact on our ranking versus us just trying to guess at how they rank 2 different things and why.
And then just to add to that, I think one of the things that struck me is we kind of were struggling with that. We get so many requests from all the committees and we don't necessarily have a representative from every committee or who was, I was new at that point. I hadn't served on a committee, so I don't have the history of like why these requests are there. I think this kind of helps us to sort of globally look at the priorities and say like somehow have some kind of qualitative evaluation way of ranking them, right? So that we're not just completely randomly ranking them on the list of 50. I mean, not randomly, but we talk
Yeah,
about it, but
right.
it's another piece of information that hopefully if we get it, great. If we don't get it, we'll do our best, but.
No,
at
I
least we
mean,
get it, yeah.
it's a great idea. What I'll add to that is, last year when we were talking about this, I don't know who it was, maybe it was you, Eva Marie, or B, someone brought up that in the past, when we had the budget committee used to be, the chairs of all the other committees used to come to budget committee,
Yes.
right? Because I had said that if you serve on a committee, try to find out, because I serve on Parks Committee and it's been helpful for me because then I know, and Parks has the most requests, so it kind of aligns well with this process. But then I don't know what about the other committees, right? And so I think we should ask the chairs to come to that October meeting. And then go through this criteria. I mean, this year, it's gonna be a work in progress, but I think over time, they'll think through this more. What does happen, the community support, most of the requests, for instance, on the Parks Committee that are on there have come from a community group requesting it. Now, I don't know in terms of impact, how it aligns, because a lot of times what happens is the people who show up, right, who put in their request, as opposed to, there might be something bigger that is just not being addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, Brendan?
So just a thought for the committee, I was just thinking that with our having YouTube videos, that at least in theory, whenever a committee discusses its budget requests at a meeting, that it would be available on YouTube. So I don't know, like whether there might be a way to sort of timestamp, well, there is a way to timestamp on YouTube, but I don't know if maybe it would be helpful for the committee if, like, when it comes time to discuss budget requests, that we have a timestamp link for the other committees' discussions of budget requests. Just a thought.
No, that's a great point, because then you could, someone can flag, like the chair hopefully would flag to NAD saying, hey, in Parks, like Neil would say, we had this as an agenda item for our June meeting. We talked about it at, I don't know, 25 minutes into the conversation, and then you could just go take a look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we can have a transcript.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a transcript or a YouTube video.
Yeah.
It would only be a little bit more work for the office, but I think that might be really helpful for
Yeah.
the committee
Yeah.
and result in a much more productive discussion when it comes time to finally rank the budget requests at its October meeting.
no, I think a transcript would be great, because then it's like, if we're in like meeting and we're trying to figure out how did something come about, we can go to the transcript, refer to Parks Request 3 at 25 minutes on the transcript and just look at it. I think obviously it won't capture everything if there's questions outside of meetings and stuff like that happen, but like, it's better than nothing. I think it's like really helpful information to at least get us directionally like situated on how did they think about it, who are the stakeholders and things like that. So I really like that idea.
And it's actually pretty easy with the YouTube, because I've done that, looked at YouTubes, and you can tell by the screen, right?
Right.
Like you just scroll it and you're like, oh, they put up the Airtable, we know they're discussing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the document. Obviously, there are some new things relative to like previous years, and like this is sort of a trial system. I think there are a lot of like, directionally, like there's a lot of improvements here that I think we can go through. But wanted to get folks' reactions on like, I know we're talking through, but like anything else you guys would think should be add, change, modify, anything like that. I think to your point, Avery, like if I can present this at Exec Wednesday, like great. Don't need to rush this, but like I think it's good just to start getting it in people's heads. And obviously, this is a long-term process. Like we're not going to perfect the budget process this year, but the idea is just to like start putting something out there that folks can sort of stare at and sort of like absorb, so that it's sort of more effective over time and people just get used to it. Yeah, B?
Can you get this document out before exec to the people that go to exec? So people have a chance to look at it and respond to it. Then, if you talk about it, you do your presentation, then if everyone's comfortable, we can actually start implementing.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go to this committee first, but once we're good, I think we could probably get Brendan to send it out like tonight or something.
Right, I think it'd be a great
yeah.
idea so that people just don't have to read on the screen and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the committee is amenable, we can send the document out tonight or tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Well, so I make a motion to I mean, I don't know, this is not a resolution, so we don't, it's not an official, but.
Yeah, I don't know if we even need a motion,
But
like,
yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm in support of, sending this out tomorrow morning or tonight to the other committee chair.
Yes.
cool. I don't know if we need to vote on that, but like.
Yeah.
Any objections?
But
Yeah.
but specifically to the other committee chair, so not necessarily to say the treasurer or something, or the assistant treasurer. Well, I guess B is the assistant
The treasurer, so he knows.
Yeah, well, you can send it out to the officers and the
Yeah.
committee chairs.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Mhm.
Awesome.
The office can do that.
Great. And yeah, as you guys are looking at it, even after the meeting, if you guys have thoughts, like this is a living document, we can make changes. And like, we'll see the reaction at exec and basically adopt from there too, but really just wanted to get something out there. So we've been talking about it for a while. So just so we can keep this process moving forward and improve it over time.
I have to say, I'm very impressed. This is wonderful, so.
Thank you. All right, so we can move on to the next topic, which is the discussion of our budget requests. I know, Brandon, you have a lot typing right now, but if you could, yeah, let out.
We're just focusing on.
Just on budget.
Budget.
Yeah.
Comment. Committee, has any of. Budget. There we go.
Thank you. You could zoom out a bit. I guess you probably find the blurb's probably hard to read anyways.
Better?
Yeah, maybe one more. So we can read a bit of it, but yeah. I think for us, like, really just ticking through these and seeing the responses, and then we can basically discuss if we want to make any changes. Obviously, like, with our deadlines, we just discussed this is due in September, but really just wanted to start getting folks, like, start thinking about these and any reactions to them and things like that. I would say one of them is like on the municipal facilities for CD6. That's one that obviously is a long-standing request that we're working on, and we'll sort of draft up a continued another response there, just continue to push for more space. But I'm not sure if folks went through this before, just mindful of time of like how we want to do this, but if anybody has specific requests, or we can tick through some of them more generally.
I mean, can we look at the responses?
Yes.
Because I thought the graffiti program is back, is what I recall, but I don't know, because we looked at this, I think, when the responses came back.
Oh, this is
Oh, no.
way faster,
Oh, okay.
wrong request. Here we go. So this one, for the record, the response was,
Inquiry needs to be directed elsewhere, okay?
yeah, which it will be.
Mhm.
The history with that particular budget request
Mhm.
is, so Economic Development Corporation used to deal with graffiti
Okay,
removal through its graffiti-free NYC program. That program got suspended at the start of the pandemic. It started up again a year or two later, but subsequently jurisdiction for graffiti has gone from EDC to Department of Sanitation. So from what I remember, this request was tagged as EDC as sort of a relic of
Right.
the days when EDC was responsible for graffiti removal rather than Department of Sanitation.
okay, so it goes to DSNY now, and that's correct, and
Yes.
yeah,
It goes to DSNY now, it is correct.
yeah,
Our office does reach out to Department of Sanitation for graffiti removal service requests.
so I mean, going to your impact point, like a lot of. I mean, I've not seen any graffiti in this district. Right, I
Yeah.
don't know, has anybody else?
I don't know, Brendan, if you get a lot of.
The only
Yeah.
one that I did see was like, if you walk around by the East River Esplanade,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you're gonna see it there, but, and I noticed
look on the
actually,
fencing, on the fencing.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I've noticed also, because that whole East Coast,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it's called, the resiliency project has now those walls,
Yeah.
they're completely covered in plastic,
yeah.
which I guess is to prevent graffiti, or I don't know why, because it's when they remove it,
When it opens, perhaps you'll
Yeah,
have
it probably
graffiti.
will become an issue, it's just, at this point, I agree.
Yeah.
You don't see it all across the district.
Yeah,
Do you get a lot of radio requests?
Yeah, this was where I was going to interject, so, the answer is not anymore.
yeah,
It was a huge problem at the start of the pandemic, probably because of, cuts with graffiti removal programs. I'm looking at our records, and at the moment, we only have one graffiti-related service request, which is a situation over by the FDR Drive in East 49th Street, which arguably might be state DOT because it's on FDR Drive property. So that might not even be the city's jurisdiction. I have heard, about, like some of the graffiti that you all had talked about with, I think it's the flood wall, but we haven't heard much else.
Yeah, I mean, are you suggesting maybe we can remove it?
I mean, I'm just bringing that up
Yeah.
because if we're using that as that criteria,
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's fair.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of like all the other things
Yeah.
that we should be focusing on, maybe this is not.
yeah.
Yeah,
I would be fine with removing it.
yeah. No, I think that's right. I think, yeah, like honestly, like practicing what we preach about like keeping relevant requests
yeah,
on,
yeah.
like, I think that's
And
right.
so I was like, oh, I haven't seen any.
Yeah, I'd be open to removing it too.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, could you pull up the waste basket one, the response? Yeah, I feel like that one is like worth keeping on, even though it's like hard. I don't know how you read when you get a like response like that. How do you like?
The availability of funds is uncertain.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, right, so in January, when we get these responses back, the city budget was in a worse shape than it is now. There is a surplus now. So, that fiscal constraint is, I don't think is as relevant.
Yeah,
Now, I mean, street side waste basket service, though, is that they're not picking up the. Like, should we have a clarification of the title?
Yeah, so the title is Full Restoration of Sanitation Street Side Waste Basket Service.
A little overflowing, okay, so I'm looking at the,
At the blurb,
yeah, the blur. Trash tends to, and so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want additional baskets as opposed to that sanitation is just not picking up. We want more baskets, right?
yes,
Yeah.
that is how I read the request as well.
Yeah,
yeah, I guess we could.
maybe the reword the title is what
Yeah.
I was thinking. Like additional
Yeah,
street side
yeah.
waste baskets?
Mhm. That would make it clear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's how it would be full restoration of sanitation waste baskets.
well, I don't know if it's restoration, it's just additional ones. I would just say like. Like additional street side waste baskets.
Because the description just says that trash has gone up since the pandemic, right? It
Yes,
doesn't say that people took away waste basket.
yeah. I'll also say from a service request standpoint, our office has gotten some complaints
Mhm.
about. Waste baskets, that used to be there, not being there anymore. Mostly due to waste baskets getting damaged and not getting replaced. With non-damaged waste baskets in a timely manner, so our office has heard a few constituents complain about that.
Okay, so then the restoration in those situations, I guess that's why the word restoration.
So yeah, it is a relevant service request, or a relevant budget request.
If you call it like restoration of street side waste baskets, then not service.
So restoration of sanitation street side waste baskets, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, I just wonder, I don't know enough about the problem, but it's like, do we want more waste baskets in addition to the ones that were damaged? I just don't know how much of. like how much we should ask for here, I guess.
That's up to the committee.
I also think now we have a public safety and sanitation.
Oh, yes,
That's true.
yeah, this should
and
not
I
even be
just don't
under
even
our,
know if that should even come to us anymore.
yeah, you are correct.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Do we want to just punt this to them and be like,
Yeah, if they
Yeah.
think it's necessary.
yeah, because they probably know more. They're, I
Yeah.
mean, they're gonna be the experts on this issue.
So-
Okay, yeah, you'll be the expert on the issue. So yeah, Brandon, why don't we just give this to the public safety and sanitation team?
They hear a dog? Okay,
And then if we can look at noise inspection. That one I followed up on, and I know we do have an answer. And we need some direction from the committee. So. Okay, then, well, the answer we got isn't in here, but essentially. The response we got is New York City law determines how the Department of DEP responds to noise requests, noise complaints. And unless the law is changed, they cannot just decide for themselves that they're gonna send out noise inspectors. So that's just the process that the law has established for how they do it, and then they sent the report about how they've closed noise inspection exists, and they've met all the targets for the year and the milestones. So the question is, okay, if we have further questions about that, we can ask them, but I mean, I'm not sure.
so this is something you would recommend removing then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any like tweak to the ask, but it's not like a budget tweak. It's like a resolution of like what you want to change about the law, to your point, not
Yeah.
like we want more funding for
yeah,
inspectors. or
for
whatever.
inspectors, and I also don't remember where this request even came from, like who brought this up? And committee.
and I did check like noise complaints to see what it was. I mean, a lot of it was helicopter
Yeah.
noise, and I think
Mhm.
that has already kind of been.
And that's an issue we were been
Yeah.
addressing quite a
Yeah.
lot, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other complaint we get is about, noise related to traffic in the area of the Queensland Town Tunnel.
Which
Which
also
there's
makes sense.
a,
Yeah.
like, there's a budget request for studies
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah. So perhaps this is, I would recommend removing this then,
Oh, it's second.
Yeah,
yeah.
good with that. I guess we just have two, which are both,
Municipal facilities.
yeah,
Yes,
and then that will go to public safety and
Yeah.
sanitation, that will come off, and then we.
And then budget increase for community boards.
okay, that stays off.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Okay,
I don't know if any people had like other thoughts of budget request additions that people were thinking about.
I mean, nothing has come up in our
Yeah,
agendas
exactly.
over the past year that would lend themselves to a budget request. per
Yeah.
se, So,
and I am of the belief, and this is why I'm trying to remember how we got these couple, maybe at the last minute, people showed up at meetings and they got added. Because I'm of belief that the request should come from the committees.
Yeah,
that they pertain to thematically.
Yeah.
We should only be the catch-all for things that really don't fit
Fit
somewhere
somewhere
else,
else, yeah.
but you know, those
Yeah.
are rare.
Yeah, oh, Brendan,
And Jesus would probably say this if he were here, so since he's not here, I'm gonna say this on his behalf. Which is that this shows why less is more might be a better approach. It's better to have fewer requests and really know well the requests you have. Than to have a bunch of requests and not know where they came from, who came up with the budget requests, what the request actually entails.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it's good that this discussion is happening.
yeah. And I think our two requests are two that we know are very important, and we
Yeah,
know them
yeah,
really
and we
well,
know
and you
it,
guys do
that's
too, so I think it's a pretty
yeah,
good set.
and sometimes for budget, again, I'm trying to remember, because I don't remember the baskets or the noise inspection, but either got added during our like September meeting, or October meeting, or during full board.
Yeah,
Someone brings it up like, oh, why don't you have this? And so that's something just to keep in mind and, as we move forward.
great. I mean, no other thoughts there. I mean, obviously, this will continue to evolve up through September, but I
Yeah.
think we are in a pretty good spot where we have our two priorities, which are both very important to us, and nothing else is on there. Next thing on our agenda is the continued discussion of voting reforms. I know Reshma, we sent out some articles that Reshma shared on this topic. I don't think we need to spend too much on it unless anybody has like a burning topic they want to discuss there. But I know we wanted to share those articles so that folks can just have access to those and start reading them. But at least in my purview, like my view at least, is that there's nothing sort of burning to discuss there, but just wanted to leave on agenda in case anybody had anything either coming out of last meeting or coming out of those articles that the board office shared.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing else. And,
Yeah.
and as I mentioned at that last meeting, this kind of came up because Jim Collins is not here right now, but he
Yeah.
was the one who had kind of brought up this issue.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, next meeting, if he wants to bring up an older new business, we
Yeah.
could probably briefly touch on it, but I don't think we need to spend too much time on it if
Mhm.
nobody here today is considering it a priority. All right, and then on the chair's report, I just wanted to close the loop on the open meetings law discussion that happened last meeting. I know we had discussed maybe putting together a resolution, but what had happened, and I know we mentioned this at full board, is that if the law has been extended through July 2026. So given that extension, there's sort of nothing burning for us right now. Obviously, something we want to continue to monitor because it's going to come up July 2026 rather quickly, and then we'll probably be in the same spot
Yeah, we'll
again.
be like,
But for now, I don't think there's anything to do there, but just wanted to give that update to the committee on sort of where we came from last meeting and how we got to where we are now here.
Yeah, and as again, in an email exchange,
Yeah.
that resolution that I think come next, the end of probably this year, we should probably put together a resolution. Also talk to Assembly member, the office can talk to Assembly member Boris, because I think Jesus was the one who's really been talking to him about his bill, if he's planning to reintroduce it next session.
Yeah,
And see, we can then we already wrote a resolution in support, but when it's reintroduced, again, have another resolution in support.
Until this is resolved, I wanted to know, we've had at least 4 meetings when there only been 4 members for quorum. And I want to know if something happens that one of us got a cold or something and we had 3, what is happening to this? Because we're not able to vote in that way. Isn't that correct? Until this is resolved. So,
Yeah, so we need
Yeah.
quorum to
That's-
pass a resolution, but like
Yeah.
tonight, we don't have a resolution,
yeah.
right? So
We do have a
then,
quorum.
yeah, today.
Yeah, we were talking
No,
about
I
it
know
before
we
you
have-
two showed
but-
up,
but
and
it's
it's like,
not
yeah,
just- But we've had 4 or 5 meetings when it's,
yeah,
when everyone just gives a sigh of relief
Yeah.
to the 4th person who
Yeah.
got here just in time for the roll
Yeah.
call. I just wanted to know when something's very important, but it's not foreseen that someone can attend, what happens to this committee during that meeting when we do have a resolution that's on the table?
I mean, you hope that like the new members also help maybe solve that problem, the new members when they join, like starting next meeting, because I feel like right now we're in this midterm thing of like the new members have not been given committee assignments yet,
Oh.
right? So hopefully, I agree that's not gonna solve the problem entirely, but hopefully that makes it a bit better. But yeah, B,
The end Brendan.
Yeah, so I also think it has not been very effective with the bylaws that committee members who can't attend should be calling the chair ahead of the meeting so that you don't come to a meeting and suddenly know that you're not doing quorum. That was the whole big problem that we had in a number of meetings that we had to cancel. But I do agree with you, 12 new members to the community board will make it more likely that we will have quorum. But I think that people have to be reminded again.
yeah.
Brendan.
The other thing, and this is something that the office can do, I can check to see whether there are any committee members who have had attendance issues, and if so, flag it for Jesus and flag it for Sandy. Because, we've seen this before where all it takes is a couple of members who consistently don't attend meetings. All it takes is, in some cases, for a couple of other members to have a head cold or a family emergency, and then you don't have quorum. So, the office can check for that as well.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
And that was even before pandemic,
Yeah.
when we had
Yeah.
quorum issues, so that's not, the one other thing I will add to that, to your thing, if we have something important. So in that situation, like, if you know it's an important resolution you wanna vote on, the chair should call or email the committee members. But for instance, we had a resolution, Neil Barkley really wanted to have, as everyone knows, on the trans girls sports thing. And, I wasn't gonna come to Parks meeting that night. I did end up coming because, he's like, oh, even, so I came late, but I made it
Yeah.
in time to be able to come perform, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, Neil's good
Yeah.
about it. I mean, even
Yeah.
for a full board, he'll like,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think, so if something important is happening in
Yeah.
you as chair, know, then I think they're just reaching out to him.
Yeah, I think like September and October meetings especially, like those are
Yeah.
the ones where we really like,
Yeah, we'll need.
We'll know which
one.
Vital,
Yeah.
otherwise we won't be able to submit our budget requests.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so like those are the main times we have really important resolutions, but I think like. The other ones, if we don't get quorum, it's honestly usually not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But I think it's, for those two meetings in particular, and then other meetings throughout the year, I think that makes sense. It's just
Yeah.
like, for me, just like, honestly, just like chasing everybody to make sure they do come to those meetings so that we do get quorum. Or at least we know if we're not, and then figure something out.
Yeah.
All right, if any member of the committee has any old or new business, please raise your hand now. All right, if there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting.
And it's 8:01 PM.
Yeah.
I have 8 PM. The computer is 8:01 PM. So
All right,
we can do 8:01 for the minutes.
yeah, seeing no objections.